All right, hey everybody. Today I'm going to do a copy of a Dean Cornwell. It's going to be just a piece of a vignette, but I always love his figures, so this affords me the opportunity to study his work and, you know, see if I can work it into my own one of these days. So I'm going to just start with a burn umber, or sorry, this is raw umber, and just a little bit of mineral spirits. That's way too much mineral spirits, but just going to loosen it up. I'm going to just add it to the white canvas. Now I'm using alkyds. These are alkyd paints. And the palette of colors that I'm using here is Payne's Gray, Raw Umber, Yellow Ochre, and Titanium White. And the thing about alkyds, they're going to dry a little faster. They're not quite acrylics. Not a big fan of acrylics. But they'll dry faster than oil. They'll actually get a little bit tacky in the middle of painting with them. So up to you whether or not you want to use them or not. I like them for the fact that I like to do these studies. They have a different consistency to them because they kind of set as you're painting. Now I'm going to paint into a wet ground here. That's why I'm toning it, and then I'm going to paint on top of it. That's also different than having a dry ground. So you can try that as well. You know, you got to see what the difference is yourself. There's pros and cons to both sides of it. Feels like you can make a hot mess if you're painting wet, like a wet ground like this. But iron oxides dry, oxidize rather fast, and therefore it's not going to be all that big of a deal for me. It's going to have a little bit of stick or tack to it, but it's not going to really mess with me all that much. Now, the other thing I want to just say here is I'm not after perfection. I'm never after perfection. There's never been a painting I've ever done that was perfect. Drop the idea of perfection. I think Vince Lombardi said, if you aim for perfection, you'll hit excellence. You know, and there's plenty of quotes. I think F. Scott Fitzgerald had one as well. So anyway, all I'm saying is that if you let go a little bit, I think you'll probably have a little bit more fun even. So I'm going to just grab a round brush here. This is just a Trekell 3000R, and what I'm going to do is just get in here and draw. Now, I'm going to probably find the drawing as I go, but I also want to get the sense of that's the back of his collar, which is going to give enough room for, that's his head. And I'm going to just lightly get it in. But this can all move if needed, you know. And there's a movement to the left. He has this twist to him, which I love. If we just run our eyes down there, you can see that his jacket starts about there. This is the shadow. So I always take this opportunity to freestyle and not have to trace a photo or project or anything like that. You know, get really good at drawing, and you won't ever have to do any of that crap. There we go. Just going to get the hat in there. Find some of this drawing. This comes over a touch more. Feel the volumes too. Start to see begin to try to see, I should say. You know, can you feel the distances between things? I think that's like the sculptor way of doing it. You know, that there's a volume to the hat and you're looking across the form on the left and the right side of it. All right, and now it's also I went to the Academy of Art University. The very Academy of Art University way of working, in which you're thinking of volumes of of forms, you know, because a lot of the time we were animating. Animation is all about moving a form in space, and that, you know, one side affects the other side. Squash and stretch is a concept we talked about a lot, and you know, it's a different way to kind of think um, of form. All right, bring this over, drop that down. So this straight down, kind of where the hands are. You know, that's the interesting thing, because if not, I would just put it maybe in the center. But I got to find out where, yeah, the left and the right, the hands coming together. Let's see if I can get this. This comes down, and this comes up and over like this. And that's that hand. Now the other thing about these Master Sketch challenges, if this doesn't mean anything to you, this Cornwell, don't paint it. Paint something that you want to paint, you know? Study the things that you're interested in, not the things that I'm interested in, you know? That's the key here. Look at that. This is just a shape. Cornwell's so good at just abstracting this stuff down into very, very simple pieces of forms and stuff. You know, and he was an illustrator, so it's important to kind of note of why he would be doing some of these things. I think they're beautiful, just even paintings. But he also was a muralist, studied with Frank Brangwyn, and he has that kind of mural, like Sargent's murals too, have that like simplicity to it. I'm sure he was studying Sargent, but there's something about it, you know, that's like it has to be graphic, which again I admire. That this comes out, and this comes down. So it's interesting to not put everybody in the same bucket of like everyone's after the same thing, and be like, what was Cornwell doing? You know, why was he doing it? Who did he study with? It's the beauty of all this stuff that, you know, once you get into master sketching and stuff, and you go beyond just why you like something, you can look into what their ideals were that they were doing, you know, as well. So, all right. Notice I haven't like measured a half and a quarter and all that stuff. Maybe a tiny bit of mineral spirits, loosening up. I mean, you can if you want. You can do whatever you want. Look at that, just down. Just loosely get in it. All right, now come back up here. Let's draw this in. His hand, shoulder there, and then this comes over. So it's like that nice, beautiful gesture. And then this right there is important because that drops to give this. So you're looking across the whole form as you're painting. Bottom of that comes over. Again, this drops. Mineral spirits, loosen up. I'm not going to do the whole thing, the whole painting. But if this is, you know, this is what I usually do with charcoal. This is enough to get the essence, then that's cool, you know, that's enough. Cornwell didn't trace photos. He didn't project. He drew. He could draw really well. He was actually the teacher of Frank Riley, or one of the teachers, I should say, of Frank Riley. Studied with Howard Pyle, and no, he studied with Harvey Dunn. And it's important to note. They said he was Harvey before he was Dunn, something like that. That like he was another version of, you know, he was doing versions of Harvey Dunn's paintings until he became Cornwell. You see a lot of Cornwell was very heavily influenced by Brangwyn as well, if you look into his work. So, pretty fascinating. All right. Just get this drawing a little bit more down here. Pull this in and over. And this is just the first pass of just data. I mean, the drawing can go in any way I want it to. After this, I'm going to then begin to kind of mask in the shadows, probably something he would have done. There's a video that James Gurney posted about him as well, and his method of painting, I think, a Spartan for one of the books. But fascinating. And you can see he's just painting it from life. There's, Walt Reed talked about Cornwell and how he painted and how he just knocked out like a painting in front of the class in like 3 hours. That's incredible. Right? I'm sure if you were alive and watching me, he would probably say this is not the way I painted or something, and that's fine. But again, the beautiful thing here is the dialogue that you can have, the extraction. What are you taking away, and how do you decipher it into making it into something that you're trying to put into your own work. All right, so then that comes down, down, up. Shape, look at that shape, right? Shape, all right there. And just mineral spirits loosening up. That's the titanium white. I'm gonna just the raw umber helps to neutralize it. I'm gonna just get some of this in. Now the tough thing about this is that if I paint it and I don't paint any of the white, it could lean too heavy towards something. Like it could be keyed wrong. Therefore, I'm going to get some of the black as well in here. So I'm gonna paint the whole thing with this one thing. So I'm gonna just now bring this down, and then as a line of black, I'm gonna just go in. I'm gonna go back and forth, scoop that up. So if you're trying to ever paint like Cornwell, which I remember I did a study back in the day, and I took 14 hours or something. I don't know. It took so long to do it, and I was like, I actually went to the Society of Illustrators one time and worked there, and I just realized that like whatever I'm doing is not what Cornwell did. He just painted so different. I think he probably had some pre-mixed mixtures. Probably how Frank Rowley is related to him, and then just slapping it on, like scooping it up like this, even if it's just a touch of white like that. But the brush, in my opinion, was loaded. It's the only way you can get the some of those chunkiness to it. And I was doing it very, very slow and methodical and trying to get the drawing accurate. And I realized at the end, this is not a Cornwell. This is a knockoff of a Cornwell. And you could just tell. Anyone with like an eye for, Cornwell's technique would have seen it. And I'm sure if Walt Reed were still around, he would have looked at it and been like, this is clearly not a Cornwell. Because I think he knew them. I know he knew Mead Schaefer. But there's a difference between like a knockoff. Like when you're getting like thick paint like this, you can't knock this off because Cornwell had the specifics of the marks and the movements that he made. You just can't do it. You could try to knock it off down to like a pixel level, and that's fine, but it wouldn't have that bravura thickness to the paint. And that's the thing that these illustrators had. They were, for whatever reason, they were knocking it out, probably for time reason. Because of that, they were able to work fast and be very, very bold. Now there's even stories about, Cornwell. In the book, there's two books, one by Patricia, I forget her name, where she talks about, or maybe it's Walt Reed talking about his training and how they would go in the field and they would kind of work for almost, I think, 16-hour days and just paint 3 paintings a day or something like that. I mean, that's insane. That's more than we did in my atelier training. But if you want to get good at something, get into the repetition of working over and over. A lot of the time, people, I think, give up. But that's probably one of the reasons why, Cornwell was, when you watch or you see the work, you're like, yeah, very confident. Of course he is. Because he's not sure. He's just expressing at that point because the language is in him. Push that over a little bit. Like you can't not, I'm going to keep bringing in a little bit of the raw umber to neutralize it. Bring this up through here. Again, mix a big batch up. If you're copying a Cornwell and you don't have a lot of paint on your brush, then you're doing it wrong. Again, I say that because I did it wrong that time where I did a master copy from the Society of Illustrators. They allowed me to come in to do it. It was Golden Hands, I think is the name of it. And it was a nice painting at the end, but it looked like a knockoff. So I got the yellow ochre just in case I need to get some warmth in here. I'm not quite sure it's going to need it, but it's got that nice lean to it, which is to me what the nice gesture is in this painting. All right, look at that. Just pull like half of that mixture. I'm going to just go a little bit more towards like the midtones, or half tones, I should say. Just begin to, hard to see if there is a difference there, but there, to get a little bit more form, I'm going to just pull more mixture down in there. And there's action in the paint when you see it like that. Like that's very active, wet paint. Again, you can't get that. You're not going to get a Cornwell or something like what he's trying to do, or Harvey Dunn, I should even say, by just copying it and saying like it's about the figure. It's not. It's about all of it. All right. Get this to come down. Warm it up a little bit. Look at Leyendecker too. He's another one. I mean, they're so bold. That's the beautiful thing about the illustrators. Could have been a function of time and work, how busy they were. But at the same time, there's a beauty, a bravura, as it's called. You see it in like Sorolla. You could tell all these artists are looking at each other, because Sorolla has that bravura, mark making. You can't copy a Sorolla. Again, you could bring it down to a pixel level, but there's so much paint on there that makes a Sorolla, and a Cornwell. It's just... All right, let me just clean the brush. I use one brush. Get asked that all the time. Why? Why not? Didn't get the memo that you're supposed to have many, but you can have one. You can have multiple. Rembrandt had many. Maybe it's just emulation of Rembrandt, but maybe it helps you to organize. And if you do whatever you want. Beautiful thing about seeing many painters paint is there's many different ways to do it, not just one. Kind of is outlining this. That actually helps to key the color, or the value, I should say. All right, let's get up here. See if I can do that wet into wet. The problem with tracing photos that I find is that if you find success doing it, you're just going to keep doing it. And you just never learn to draw. I mean, I get people trying to do it in a rush, but, you're just going to rely on it. It's like having training wheels, never learning how to, ride a bike, and then you're in a race, and you're like, where's the training wheels? Like, no, get rid of the training wheels, learn this stuff, and there's a huge learning curve to feeling like you can do all this, and you gotta get there. I don't know if Cornwell used mediums. It's possible he did. Um, and I know Michael Aviano. Michael met Dean, he said, because his connection to Frank Riley, and Michael Aviano was the monitor for Frank Riley, which is why he's kind of tied to Munsell, but he doesn't do the Munsell system. He doesn't like it. He went more with a Gerda wheel. From when I spoke to him, there's an interview on YouTube that John DeMartin did with him, which I helped to kind of produce. Fascinating. It just shows you can use whatever wheel you want. Painters are known to break rules, and maybe you want to use a Munsell wheel. I actually went to Mass Art, where it was called the Normal School when Albert Munsell went there. We never talked about Munsell at all. It's not even mentioned in a breath of anything in all my color theory classes, which is amazing. So, anyway, take what you will with that data. Up to you whether or not you want to, but all right. That's kind of enough. Obviously, like, if you want, you can get in here and try to get the top. Now, that's the thing. Can you draw? Can you draw that in? And if you don't, you have to trace photos. Like, do you have to go trace another photo now? All right. Do you have to get all that action in there? No. I mean, the question too is, are you learning something by doing this? And what is it? Like, you can get your own takeaway, even just from working wet into wet, being like, this is probably the way that he worked, but maybe I'm not perfect in the brushstrokes, but there's still some wonderful takeaway here. So how fast it can go too. Maybe even just spackle it on. I remember even trying that. Maybe that's too much. I don't know. Gives a hierarchy. Right? So it brings it up in the light a little bit more. Just leave it. All right. And there's just a little punch of like in the light right there. Yeah. All right. Maybe this comes down too much, you know? That's the thing, you can find it in shape too. A little light up through here. That's what he's doing. Carve out the fingers a little bit. Go back and forth. Get as detailed as you want. Can you paint the shape and then go back in? Well, see if you can. The only way to find out is to try. Well, that's abstract. Could articulate as a hand. maybe a little bit more on the warm side of the pants. That's all darker, value-wise. And then maybe a little, feels like a little bit towards like green. You know, like he's trying to get a little bit different color in there or something. All right, and now you can put a line around it if you want. You can even go back in like here and just clean the brush. And then just, that's too dirty. This is where the illustrators would go back in with like white and clean the edge sometimes. Even that. You know. Now, up to you where you want to stop. I mean, if you feel like it's time thing, then end it, you know. But if you want to spend a little bit more time, find if there's, you know, a couple more things you go back in, like there. See how I have to pull that in and let it be like a calligraphic mark to get some of the things that he's getting. Pay attention. That's the thing I have to tell everyone. Pay attention to what you're doing and why, you know? Like, what are you trying to do? It's not just mindlessly putting paint down all the time. It's being articulate. And that's something we learned at Water Street. Like, everything is going to go down in an order for a reason, not like everything's a later. You know, like I'll come back to it. It's like, no, do it now. Get it close. Reel the painting in. Every mark should make it better. You know? Soften the edge. You know, a little sharp right now at spots. Even there you can still soften it. A little bit more of a natural look. Take this down. I think it's a little too dark. Again, look at your own marks as well. In doing this, is there something that you're learning as well? You know, that you could bring into something? Even if it's just a fun exercise and like a copy of a Cornwell or something. What else can you extract from it, you know? Get some more spackle white on there. Look at that, spackling it. Doesn't even look like a spackle. Here's better. Depending on the brush too is the mark you're going to get. So this is just a round. It curls around. I love this brush. maybe that's where you want to leave it. I don't know. I'm gonna just get a couple more marks in here. Call it a day. Yeah, and you can do what they do very well, and that's to take and kind of put white around the whole thing if you want. Up to you. All right, and then lastly, let's just get this over here. Maybe one little, whoop, just to show there's a leg. And they just, like that. All right. Probably a good place to stop. Look at that. I didn't even render the hands. I'll just leave them abstract like that.